Wow, wow, wow! What a game! Seemed like the Lions were, dead to rights and had no possible chance of winning the game. And then all of a sudden, they're in basically the red zone with with 25 seconds left or something. Um, that was crazy. It didn't end up going in our favor, but crazy game, crazy end nonetheless. No, I had to completely rewrite my little description here because at first it was how it was a body bag and all that, and then it looked like the Lions might win. So had to make some adjustments there. I am Ryan from the Sports Carnage podcast. The link to our Facebook page is in the description on this video, which should be to the left to the right of your screen. And if you're watching this on YouTube after our Facebook show, the link to our podcast and all of our social medias will be down in the description below. And you can listen to us on Spotify, Podbean, as well as Apple Podcasts. So the Dan Campbell era starts off in Detroit with a very late push to try and steal a victory from the Niners, trying to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. They were unable to do it, and it was a huge roller coaster, the last like 5 minutes or so, because the first 55 minutes of the game did not go in the Lions' favor at all. At one point, they were down 38-10, and then I think it was like 41-17, where it seemed like the Niners were just going to cruise to a really easy victory, which is what everybody had predicted, before the game. If you were in a survivor pool this week, your first pick was probably the Niners over the Lions. And I think the game actually closed at like 8.5 spread in Vegas, and the Lions did cover because they ended up only losing by 8. So shout out there. And I just want to know really how you guys are taking it. Are you inspired by the late push that the Lions were able to come up with? Do you think that's a sign of the Dan Campbell culture and not giving up even when your backs are very, very much against the wall? Or do you think it's just the Niners were they kind of stopped playing for a lack of a better kind of term, and that the Niners stopped playing, and that's what allowed the Lions to kind of come back. Chuck says Goff with the classic stat Padford. Yeah, I mean you saw it in a lot of the games that Stafford would have these big numbers, but the Lions would end up losing. And same thing with Goff here today: 338 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. So if you're looking at just that, you would think it was a pretty good day for Jared Goff. Except for most of the game, he was kind of like terribly inefficient. There was a point where I think he had 39 pass attempts and he had 120 yards or something like that. So it was really maybe a little bit more than 120. Maybe I'm being unfair there, but it was a lot of check downs, a lot of short passes. Nothing really down the field that the Lions were able to gain for most of the game, and I think that's more or less what you'll see this year. Jared Goff's not going to be the quarterback to air it out and throw it for 20 yards in the air or something like that. You're going to see a lot of screens, swings, check downs, things like that. And it's probably something you're just going to have to get used to. Betty says that she is actually inspired by the comeback, and she doesn't think that the Niners were just chilling. And then Dell says, still no running game, 54 yards rushing. I don't know that they don't have a running game. They had way more than 54 yards rushing. They had 116 yards rushing. Williams himself had 54. So maybe, you're saying their lead rusher had 54 yards rushing. But they ran the ball 24 times for 116 yards, basically 5 yards a carry. And I think the running game was the most, the best part about this game for the Lions. Right? You saw the committee that they were using with Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift. And they were both able to, do some pretty good work. Swift on the ground a little bit less so. He only had 3.5 yards of carry, but he had that one big touchdown that he caught. So that was still out of the backfield, although it's obviously not a run. And then Williams had 9 carries for 54 yards at 6 yards of carry, which is obviously a much better average. And I thought Sewell held up really well. And the entire offensive line, really, in my opinion, did a good job blocking in the run game. There were, the Lions had that drive where, they really were able to establish the run, and then it came. I believe that was the drive that Saber missed his kick, although it could have been the one he made. But they were just running it down down the Niners' throats, and then they ran it a couple times and got stuffed. But overall, the running game actually looked pretty solid today. And the rushing numbers probably would have looked better in terms of total yards if the Lions weren't trying to play catch up at the end. Right, like you said, they were down 38-10. They were down 41-17 in the second half, and that's not a point in time where you're running the ball. Jared Goff threw the ball 57 times, and that's not what the Lions are going to want to do moving forward. That's probably going to be the most that you're going to see Jared Goff throw the ball this year. Doc says tried and true Honolulu Blue. Jordan actually said Goff impressed him. The pick six haunted us, though. I mean, yeah, now it's kind of funny that you can look back at any of the touchdowns the Niners scored and say, that was the difference in the game because it was only a one-score game at the end of it. The pick six was obviously not great, and even if it wasn't a pick, they illustrated it on the broadcast, Mark Sanchez and whoever the play-by-play guy were. I believe he was trying to throw to Hawkinson, and there were like 3 defenders around there already. So, even if it wasn't picked, there's pretty much no way it was going to get through. AJ says, I can see the dumpster fire from Pontiac. The only way the Lions will ever get into the Super Bowl is through Ticketmaster. They're certainly a long way away from the Super Bowl over there, AJ. And for most of the game, it was a dumpster fire. But I think there is still some positive to take away from it. With the grain of salt, obviously. I do like the fight that the team showed. Not quitting like you could probably see the Niners did. But at the same time, you probably don't get some of those big plays at the end if the Niners didn't, if the Niners were still going full throttle. But you have to play 60 minutes in the NFL. And I'm sure that's something that the Niners will probably do forward because it almost ended up costing them. I can absolutely not stand these stupid ads on ESPN. James says he's inspired with the game. Lots of drop passes, but the late push and never give up attitude is appreciated. Would like to see wide receivers more involved. They are new, but hopefully next week there is some more passes to that player group. I think the wide receivers would have to get open for that. That was the knock. Well, the Lions had many knocks coming into the year, but one of the knocks this year was their wide receiver group is probably the worst in the NFL, and I agree with that. And then to your point about the Lions not throwing to their wide receivers, they had three pass catchers with 8 targets today. However, it was T.J. Hawkinson, their tight end, not a wide receiver, and then DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams both had 8 targets as well. Again, 2 running backs, no wide receivers. Their wide receiver with the most targets was I was looking at receptions, and they each had 8. Kind of the same point. Hawkinson had 10 targets, DeAndre Swift had 11, and Jamal Williams had 9. So not so far off. But the receiver that led their team in targets was Quintez Cephas with 7, and the receiver that led their team in catches was Khalif Raymond with 3. Not a great showing from the receiver group by really any stretch of the imagination. But I think that's something that we all knew coming into the year. Even if you were a little bit higher on the Lions receivers, I don't know why you would be, but you might have just had a little bit more hope than I did. You knew T.J. Hawkinson was going to be the main receiving threat on this team. At least they didn't lay down at the end like the past. You could say yes. They didn't lay down here, but in the past, I mean, I don't know that they did a lot of laying down in the past either. The Lions under Stafford, and maybe not these last couple years, but they did have a lot of comeback wins with him at the helm, and that's kind of a telltale sign of them not laying down. But I do appreciate that they didn't that they didn't end up just quitting. And I'm sure if you bet on the Lions to cover, you appreciated it as well. I really wish they played the first 3 quarters like they played the fourth. in terms of execution, yeah, but again, I do think that was helped by the Niners, probably playing a little bit more lax. When they had their big lead, either again at the point it was 38-10 or 41-17, but they lost. Is it Jason Verrett, one of their defensive back players, and I believe someone else got hurt on one of the offensive or defensive lines, and I think at that point the Niners were content with just kind of not playing as hard as they might have and just trying to escape with the win. Although I'm sure they envisioned it going very differently than having to make a defensive stop, kind of deep in their own territory, to win the game. I'm sure they would have much preferred to take a knee up 14 with 30 seconds left or something. SOL. I mean, I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think you can say that after this game. I mean, they lost, and they're still probably not a very good team, but I don't think this game was, something that the Lions messed up necessarily. Positive, they go in to support Chicago and Green Bay. I don't necessarily know what that means. 2 missed field goals and a pick six, and the Lions would have won. I know they had the first missed field goal. Did they? Yeah, they only missed the 1 field goal. Siebert missed from 50 or something, 52. But he made another one from 49. But yeah, the pick six obviously looking back hurt, but at the time it hurt as well. But at the time, I think the pick six made the game 28-10 or something. So the Lions were already down by 2 scores, and at that point, it still probably wasn't a game that you thought the Lions were going to win. Why do Lions haters always join our fan groups? Just leave. I think the Lions have given the people a lot of reason to hate them over the years, and I don't know that there's so many people that hate the Lions. They're probably just not going to be very good this year. But if they were winning, which I think everyone would prefer, you hear a little bit more positivity about them. If the Lions signed a top tier wide receiver, would definitely have helped. Basically, yeah. I mean, so again, they didn't give a lot of targets to their wide receivers. Their leading receiver in targets was, again, it was Khalif Raymond, it was Quintez Cephas, and he had 7 targets. And Quintez Cephas is certainly not a top receiver, but I think probably the top receiver available was Kenny Golladay, and with the Lions in rebuild mode, I didn't feel it would have been a good move for the Lions to sign him long term, because that it obviously inhibits your ability to sign other players. And a receiver, while I don't think it's the top priority, you probably need something better than the Lions have if you're going to win. But you can win in the NFL with receivers that are better than the Lions have, without necessarily them being the elite receivers in the league. This year is all about growth, not wins. Mark, I 100% agree with you. Right, we need to see growth from the guys that are part of our core. You want to see growth from Sewell, from Swift, from Hawkinson, from Jamal Williams, again, who looked really good today, from Okudah, who the backs coach was just, giving him the business, essentially, and yelling at him. Maybe not worse than you've ever seen a football coach yell at somebody, but in the NFL, it was one of the worst kind of one-on-one coach to player talking tos I think that I've seen. It just looked really. It seemed like it went on for a really long time, and he kept that same intense anger the whole time. But they did, after the Deebo Samuel touchdown, I think they showed a video of that same coach, kind of grabbing Okudah's face, but lovingly, and trying to support him. So it's probably just, a coach being hard on this player. But it did seem it seemed more aggressive than I think we've seen a sideline camera catch a lot of those interactions before. Why can't they start the game that way? Always late to the party. Again, I think they, of course, would have liked to start the game that way, but I think it did have a lot to do with the Niners just kind of falling back and trying to get out with a win, and not necessarily so much, things just clicking on the Lions' end. Do you believe Okudah is a bust? Oh man, it's my heart. Or my mind says yes, probably, but my heart says no, and I still do think it's a little bit too early. but it does not look good for Okuda at all. And you again have to remember, and football is of course different than basketball. But like you just saw Sekou Doumbouya get traded from the Pistons, and he was the only guy on the team that wasn't like a Troy Weaver guy. And I think you could start to see some of that here, where Okuda is not a Brad Holmes guy, he's not a Dan Campbell guy. They weren't here when they picked him just one short year ago. So it's it's really tough, and if Okuda keeps struggling, I think you can see him go the way of like Tease Tabor, where he's off the team in a pretty like intensely fast fashion. And he probably won't be as bad as Tibor was, just because he does have some physical tools that Tibor just didn't. But Tease Tabor, sorry. You guys knew what I was talking about though. But yeah, it doesn't look good so far. I wouldn't say he's a bust yet, but I'm very concerned about Okuda. They didn't quit down 28. I would say that is already an improvement in growth and culture. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good sign for the culture, but again, they had a lot of comeback wins, that we've all seen before. Not necessarily down 28, right? Those games they might have been down 17, 14, something like that. So 28 probably would have been one of the bigger comebacks that we've seen. But we hadn't seen that obviously for a couple years because we've been losing a lot of those games. They made San Francisco scared in the last 2 minutes. I bet they did. Galladay is injured again, hamstring. I knew he was dealing with the hamstring like all offseason. I don't know if he ended up being named like active for week 1 or something. But yeah, he's had this hamstring issue basically all offseason. After getting his big payday from the Giants. What else? Again, like I said, I was really impressed with how Sewell held up. The defense wasn't impressive at all, honestly. They had San Francisco, they were able to pass the ball really effectively. Garoppolo had 314 yards on only 17 completions, which is a lot. And not a lot of completions, but a lot of yards. And he only had the 1 touchdown. And they ran it in for 2 touchdowns, but Trey Lance threw for a touchdown as well when they brought him in the red zone. So not a great showing for the Lions defense. Obviously they gave up 34 points because the offense gave up 7 of those, but they allowed 131 yards rushing on like 5 yards a carry, and again over 300 yards through the air. So if you're going to win games, you obviously need your defense to improve. But the Lions had one of the worst defenses, maybe the worst defense in the league last year, and there's not a lot of improvement this year. So I think you'll see the focus, as this regime continues to really be on the defensive end. I saw a tweet from somebody, and I wish I had. I wish I knew who it was. It was either I think Will Hunter or Peach James, and if you're a Michigan State fan, you're probably a little bit more familiar with those names or Twitter handles. But they say no, there's a really strong possibility that you can see the Lions have, like half new starters on the defense next year, which I think is probably the case, right? Because even with the offense, they have some of their guys already in place. Obviously, you don't have your quarterback of the future there, but you have guys like Swift. You have even St. Brown, who's, you figure will be a factor moving forward in the offense. You have Hawkinson, Williams. Your entire offensive line is pretty young. Ragnow's locked up. Decker's locked up. Jonah Jackson was a rookie last year. Penei Sewell, obviously a rookie this year. So you have the core of your offensive line that you're going to have moving forward. So I do think a lot of the changes that you'll see coming, obviously besides quarterback in the next couple of years, will be completely revamping the defense. And I think in a lot of ways the Niners are kind of the blueprint that the Lions, want to follow. A team that's going to run the ball, that's going to have a strong defense, that's going to have a strong line on both the offensive line and defensive line. They're going to be a really physical team, and I'm sure the Lions hope that they can get a quarterback better than Jimmy G in there, kind of in their version of the future. But I do think it's not a mirror match yet because the Lions aren't there, but the Niners team is a team that the Lions are looking to be built like. We all know this year isn't going to be good, but I think the growth in the run game and defense has to get better, so we fans have something to look forward to. I think you can look forward to the running game. There's going to be games. Again, they didn't have a 100-yard rusher today, but they had over 100 yards on under 25 carries. So it was a really good showing, kind of, in that instance. Anytime you can average basically 5 yards a carry as a team, you're doing something right. I don't know that there's a lot of room. There's certainly room for the defense to get better. I just don't know that there's a lot of possibility for the defense to get better, because it's a bad defense and it's full of bad players. There's certainly young guys that you can look at and say, I hope he takes a step up. Kuda obviously being one of those. But in terms of like the defense growing throughout the season, I don't know that we're going to get that. I think we're going to see a lot of games where the Lions are giving up, 35, 40 points, things like that, and it's just going to be hard to win. It's going to be hard to win anyway. One final note that I did kind of want to talk about is if you believe the Lions are going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, the Bengals, they went into overtime with the Vikings. I'm not quite sure how that game ended, but the Texans got a win, and the Texans are a team that's people figure is going to be fighting for that number 1 pick. So them getting a win so early is good for the Lions if you want the draft position and you're kind of already looking towards that. And the Bengals got a win as well. A team that will probably be in the bottom 5 of the NFL. So you have those two teams getting wins out of the way, and already stacking up a win on the Lions. And I don't know if you guys think the Lions are going to win a bunch of games or not. I don't. I do think they'll be in contention for the number 1 pick, and I think the Texans and the Bengals will be two other teams that are in contention for that pick. So for them getting a game on the Lions there, I'm low-key excited about. Although early in the season I want the Lions to win all the games. It's probably not till like week 6 or 7 if they're 1-6 that I'll kind of start rooting for draft position. But if you guys think, again, if you're already looking towards the draft, or if you need like a consolation prize from a victory today, that could be it for you. I think that's probably what we have for the most part today. Again, just a quick recap. The Lions for 55 minutes look like one of the worst teams in the NFL, which I think most of us thought they'd probably be. And then the last 5 minutes, they almost stole the game away. But at least they didn't quit. Not a lot of execution. Running game, signs of positive. The defense, bad like it was supposed to be. But thank you guys for joining me. Again, I'm Ryan from the Sports Carnage Podcast. You can listen to our podcast where we're certainly going to be talking more about the Lions game. We recapped both the Michigan and Michigan State games, not only yesterday, but last week as well. So if you guys missed those, you can go on our YouTube and look those up there. This video will probably be on YouTube in the next 30 minutes. So like if you tuned in late, Sports Carnage Podcast, YouTube, we're pretty good about getting those up pretty fast. So go there, subscribe, all that. If you're watching this on YouTube after, hit the little bell for the subscribe button, because we'll be doing the Lions games as well as the Michigan State games pretty much every week. And then again, just listen to the podcast on Spotify, on Apple Podcast, the podcast apps that you already have downloaded on your phone. Just type in Sports Carnage there, and then you'll hear not just myself, but I'm with a rotating cast of like 3 or 4 other guys that are all from the area. So a lot of our talk is Detroit sports based, essentially. So if you guys are looking for that, go do that, and then follow us obviously on social media, Sports Carnage Podcast. You can find us Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, obviously, all of that fun stuff. But that has been it. I've been Ryan Griffin. Thank you guys so much for joining me. A lot of questions today, a lot of interaction. Love to see that. And it is my pleasure as always. Have a good rest of your football Sunday, everybody.